Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Marcel Sheriar. In today's video, we're going to solve a classic coding problem, finding the peak element in an array. I'll first walk you through the complete C# code inside Visual Studio with proper comments, and then I'll explain how the logic works while running the program. By the end of the video, you'll clearly understand how to identify the peak in an ascending and descending array. So let's get started. I created this project with the program.cs file, which is the main file where I'm going to test out the program, which has two things. One, it's going to create an object of the peak finder class. And then the second one is running the program. So it's going to run the peakfinder.cs class. So now the question is basically asking, write a C# console program that finds a peak element in an array of integers. The array is arranged in ascending order first and then in descending order. A peak element in an element is an element that is greater than or equal to its neighbors. Your program should, 1, prompt the user to enter the number of elements. Take input for all the array elements. Thirdly, loop through the array to find the peak element. Lastly, display the peak element to the user. So here, we first declared the fields, then we added the processing steps inside a method, which we named the method as run. We first asked the user for the array size. Then we asked that with the array size that we get, we're going to create the array. Then we're going to get array elements from the user. Then we're going to initialize a variable to store the peak element. Then we're going to loop through the array to find the peak. We're going to display the peak element. And then we're also going to pause the program, which means that basically you press any key to pause the program. So now I'm going to run this program for you. Just going to let it run. So first thing it's going to ask me is enter the number of elements in the array. Let's say we enter 5. We're going to press enter. It's going to say enter element number 1. I'm going to say 2. Then it's going to ask me to enter element number 2. I'm going to say 3, 4, 5. And then we'll just drop it back down to 4. So then it told me that the peak element is 5. Now it's asking me press any key to exit. Let's say I'm going to press escape. We exited out of the program. So now the problem statement. So just a quick recap. The task is to find the peak element in an array of integers where the array element first increases in ascending order and then decreases in descending order. A peak element is an element that is greater than or equal to its neighboring element. This type of problem is common in coding interviews and logical programming challenges. The program requirements were ask the user for the number of elements in the array, which we did. Then we took the input for the array elements. Then we traversed the array to find the peak element. Then we displayed the peak element on the console. Then we used clear comments and proper structure. So here's the input processing and output chart that we had. which clearly had the number of elements in the array elements in ascending and then descending order. Here were the steps that we processed. And then the output was the peak element in the array is displayed on the console. Here was the example run. So the array increases to 12 and then decreases 12. 12 is greater than or equal to its neighbors, 7 and 9. So it's the peak element. So now the logic and explanation. So the program starts by reading how many numbers the user wants to input. It then stores the numbers in an array. Using a loop, the program checks each element to find where the values is higher than or equal to both its previous and next element. When the condition is true, that element is stored as the peak. Finally, the program outputs the peak element to the user. The tools we used, well, firstly, programming language we used was C#. The IDE was Visual Studio, and it was also a console application template. So one conclusion that we can come up was that this program demonstrates how to use arrays, loops, and conditional logic in C#. It is a simple but powerful example of solving a classic algorithm problem step by step. Now, some of you might be wondering, why did I use int.parse instead of convert.toInt32? Well, the reason is pretty simple. Int.parse is strict. If the user doesn't type a number, it throws an error. That might sound bad, but here it actually helps us catch mistakes early because the array size must be a number. If I had used convert.toInt32 and the user just pressed enter, the program would think the size is 0, and that would break the logic of finding the peak element. For professional projects, I could also use int.tryparse to handle errors more gracefully. But for this program, int.parse is perfect for clear and simple input. In this program, we used int.parse to convert the user's input from a string to an integer. This is an important part of the peak element finder program because the user enters the size of the array and we need that number to create and process the array correctly. Now the difference between int.parse and convert.toInt32. While both int.parse and convert.toInt32 can convert a string to an integer, there are key differences between them. If input is null, int.parse throws an exception which crashes the program, whereas convert.toInt32 returns 0. If input is invalid text, int.parse throws an exception, as well as convert.toInt32 will also throw an exception. Now, best for int.parse when you're sure the user will enter a number, whereas convert.toInt32 when the input might sometimes be null. You might ask why int.parse is a good choice here. In this program, the user is required to enter a number, so using int.parse is a good choice because it's simple and direct. It makes it clear that the input must be a valid number. If the input is not valid, the error helps identify the issue during testing. So example, using convert.toInt32, int size equals to convert.toInt32 console.readLine. This would return 0 if the user pressed enter without typing anything, which might not be ideal here because an array size of 0 doesn't make sense when finding a peak element. So just a quick summary, int.parse, strict and straightforward for valid required input, convert.toInt32, forgiving if the input is null, int.tryparse, safest if you want to prevent crashes. And that's it for today's video. We successfully coded and explained how to find the peak element in an array using C Sharp. I hope this tutorial helped you understand not just the code, but also the logic behind it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends who are learning programming. I'll be back soon with more practical coding tutorials and projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.